15 games left in the Major League Baseball season. The NL East looks like it's going to come down to the very end. It is week 2 in the NFL. We're going to talk about my predictions for this upcoming week and my top 5 New York Knicks of all time. It's time for the Sunday Sports Sermon. It's time to preach. And welcome back to New York Sports WickerMedia. I am Watu-K99. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoy this content, please hit the like button, subscribe, share with a friend. I enjoy making this content for you. I appreciate all of your support. Let's see how big we can grow this thing. All right, it is time for the Sunday Sports Sermon. And for the first time in a while, I am not wearing green on this channel. A whole lot of my focus has been getting ready for the first Jets game, getting the trip planned. It's been primarily nothing but Jets content really for the last 2 weeks. So it's time to switch it up a little bit. We'll still talk, there'll be a little bit of Jets here, but I've already done my predictions, my 5 bold predictions, and I'll be doing the 3 plays you might not remember. That'll be on Monday. And, of course, I will be with Buffalo Jets fan, along with Jeremy and Tigo. We're going to start doing post-game shows. So 10 minutes after the Jets game ends, tune into the Buffalo Jets fan channel. And you can watch my friends and I breaking down the Jets game. I'll be doing it from AJ Gators, where I hang out with the Virginia Jets fan club. So I can't promise there won't be any background noise, but it's going to be quite the show. I'm very confident in saying that. All right, so let's get into a little bit of content here. As far as the Mets go, they're still technically tied with the Braves. I know they're 1 game up on the Braves, but they are still tied in the loss column, which is what most people typically go by. 15 games left to go in the NL East. It's pretty sure at this point that whoever wins the NL East will be the 2nd seed in the National League playoffs, which is pivotal to get that first round bye to the National League Division Series. You want to avoid that wild card round, the best 2 out of 3, even if all 3 games would be in Citi Field. You know, I don't need to see the Mets as the 4th seed playing the Phillies or the Padres or the Brewers or whoever it might be. Oh, by the way, Phillies, thanks for nothing. 2 straight defeats in Atlanta. Thanks, appreciate it. But I wanted to highlight 2 Mets in particular who I got to be honest, I was pretty excited about these 2 newcomers joining the Mets. They both had their moments. At times it hasn't always looked great, but I think all in all they proved to be solid additions. One is Eduardo Escobar. Now, he had a rough first start to the season. He came over from Milwaukee and Arizona, kind of with the idea that he was going to be the one to give Pete Alonso some protection, and that hasn't really worked out. He has been demoted from the 5 spot to the 8th spot in the lineup, but over the last 2 weeks, we started to see some consistent production from him. You know, before that, Escobar might hit for a cycle, you know, which was pretty cool to see. He did have a game-winning hit or 2, but he would have that moment then basically go into the tank for 10 days to 2 weeks. Well, over the last 2 weeks, Eduardo Escobar is hitting .412, and he's hit 6 home runs. So he is turning it on at just the right time, especially at a point when Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, and Pete Alonso have not been hitting quite as well. And also Starling Marte has been on the injured list with a finger injury, with a fractured finger. And with an update on Marte, it looks like he tried to do some baseball activities, but he still felt some discomfort, so he may not be ready until maybe the last week or the last couple of days of the regular season if all goes well. So Escobar, I want to give him some credit, and I also want to give some love to Chris Bassett. The Mets acquired him from the Oakland A's for JT Ginn over in the offseason, and he has been a bulldog. The guy just knows how to pitch. Whereas Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer have that very high heat, they throw that very hard fastball, both fantastic pitchers, but Bassett's not going to blow you away with his velocity. He just seems to know how to work his way out of jams. Look at last night, those two curveballs for strike two and strike three to Brian Hayes when the Pirates had two runners on and were making a legitimate threat to get back in the game. Bassett just seems to know how to get his way out of tough situations, and you need that kind of pitcher in the playoffs to really help you go far. But right now, for the season, opponents are hitting .217 with runners in scoring position against Bassett. Very good number, and he has a 3.32 ERA. Oh, to make this outing even more impressive, for the 6 shutout innings that he threw, 2 days ago, Bassett had a stomach bug that basically knocked him out. That he wasn't even necessarily going to make the start. You know, the Mets really kept that quiet. But he managed to fight his way through and deliver a big outing for this team right when they really needed it. So I'm very happy Chris Bassett is a Met, and I hope he's going to be back next season. All right. Now we're going to do something a little bit different. Now, I didn't talk too much about this last week. This idea just kind of came to me over the week. Now, for years, I've been doing confidence pools for the NFL. So what you do, for those who have never done a confidence pool before, is you pick all 16 games for the week, or however many games there may be. And then you rank them from most confidence to least confidence. So the game you have the least confidence in, you pick a winner and you give it 1 point. So if you get that game right, you get 1 point. This week, there's obviously 16 games, so the game you have the most confidence in, you pick the winner and you assign yourself 16 points. That game gets 16. So that's basically how it works. The idea is to get the most possible points in addition to picking winners. So a lot of people do the spreads, a lot of people do the straight-up picks, but I like doing this confidence pool thing. I actually do all three. But we're going to do the confidence pool, and I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you my picks every week. From the most confident to the least confident, let's track my record, let's track my points, and let's see how I do. Now, last week, I'll let you know, I went 10-6-1. Now, I got the majority of the games right, which for week one is pretty good, but I picked the Colts to win. They were my most confident pick, and that wound up being a tie. So what happens with a tie? That game gets thrown out. So it's as if that one didn't exist. Unfortunately, I didn't do quite so well with the other picks. I got the Broncos over the Seahawks. That game I got incorrect. And I had the 49ers over the Bears. That game was incorrect. And those were my 15 and 14-point games, respectively, so I lost 29 points on those games alone. So let's see if we can get those. I got to get a 16, a 15, and a 14 this week. So you're going to see my picks flashing on the screen right now. And so here's what we've got. We've got the LA Rams. I always like good teams after they lose in week one. I like them to make comebacks in week two. And for me, the Rams over the Falcons is about as surefire a pick as there could be. Rams are home. They've had the extra time to rest. The Rams are angry. The Falcons, I think, gave a lot of what they had to defeating the Saints. Didn't quite work out. I can't imagine this game is going to be over anytime before the second quarter. It's going to be over by halftime. With my 15, I'm going with the Denver Broncos over the Houston Texans. 14, we're going to go Indianapolis over Jacksonville. 13, I'm going Packers over the Bears. Until I see differently, Aaron Rodgers still owns the Bears. 12, we're going to go with the 49ers to beat the Seahawks. Number 11, I've got the Bills over the Titans. 10, we're going to go Bengals over Cowboys. I don't know how many times I'll be able to pick the Cowboys again until Dak Prescott comes back from his injury. Then they start for me to get a little bit more difficult. I'm going to go Eagles over the Vikings with my 9. The 8 will be Ravens over the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins need a little bit of a reality check. I think Mike McDaniel gets a little humble pie. 7 is where I'm going to pick the Browns over the Jets. I'm picking them. I believe the Browns will win this game. I definitely think the Jets are capable if they play to the best of their ability. We've talked about it. Having to contain Myles Garrett, having to give Joe Flacco time to throw the football. All those things are going to be super important. Number 6, I've got the Lions over the Commanders. I've already got the number 5 correct. I picked the Chiefs over the Chargers, so I'm off to a good start there. Number 4, I'm going Raiders over Cardinals. Number 3 is going to be Giants over Panthers. And then I've got the Bucks over the Saints with my 2. I know that the Bucks haven't beaten the Saints since Brady joined Tampa Bay as far as regular season games go. Both teams have a lot of injured players. I just don't know if I have enough faith in Jameis Winston to do the job, even if the game is in New Orleans. But I do expect that game to come down to the last drive for sure. And with my number 1, my least confident pick, I am going to go with the New England Patriots defeating the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. So let's see how these picks work out. And now we're going to do a top 5 countdown. I am wearing this very handsome orange and blue New York Knicks shirt. We're going to count down my top 5 favorite Knicks of all time. So let's get right to it with number 5. Number 5 is going to be Jeremy Lin. There was just something about linsanity. I think Knicks fans during that time, during 2011, late 2011, really early 2012, were starving for some kind of notoriety and attention from mainstream fans, mainstream media that was actually positive. The Knicks hadn't really had a good season, really a legitimate season, 8 to 9 years at that time. So what happened was Iman Shumpert, who I actually got to meet before he even joined the Knicks because he went to high school only about 20 minutes from where I was living at the time. And they had a big night for him. It was at Oak Park River Forest High School in suburban Chicago. And they had a night just to send him off. And I got to meet him and got his autograph. So I was always like Shump. I was always a fan of his. Well, he got hurt December 27th of 2011. And the Knicks signed Jeremy Lin, who had been with Houston. He'd been with Golden State. Never received much playing time. Played for a couple of random non-NBA teams as well. And he entered one game, and he was playing a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. In Mike D'Antoni's offense, he just seemed to lead that offense well. And one of the big games was when they played the New Jersey Nets, and he completely outplayed Darren Williams. At that point, people started to get attention. There was the game-winning jumper against the Raptors. There was the national TV Sunday game against the Lakers, where the Knicks knocked off Kobe Bryant and L.A., which was saying a lot, beating the Dallas Mavericks, at that time the defending NBA champions. It was a fantastic 2-month run. Unfortunately, he did tear his meniscus and was unavailable for the playoffs. And during that offseason, it ended just that fast. He was a restricted free agent, and the Houston Rockets offered him a 4-year contract that had a poison pill that would have made it very hard for the Knicks to match it. And they did not match it. They wound up signing Raymond Felton to replace Jeremy Lin. And while Lin has since played in the NBA, he's played for about another 8, 9, 10 years or so. Never quite got back to the same heights that he reached during the linsanity days. But at the end of the day, still a great memory for Knicks fans and a good guy too. So I'll give credit to Jeremy Lin. Plus, I actually brought his T-shirt, I will admit. I have not brought much Knicks gear. I think I brought 3 Knicks shirts in the last 21 year in the last 22 years, actually. So the Lin shirt was one. This shirt is another one, and we'll get to that one later. So that one's that. Number 4 is going to be Charles Oakley, number 34 from Virginia Union, co-captain. Spent 10 years with the Knicks from 1988 to 1998. Came over in a trade from the Chicago Bulls for Bill Cartwright. Once the Knicks drafted Patrick Ewing, Ewing and Cartwright kind of didn't make a whole lot of sense together. So they traded for the defense, the rebounding, and most importantly, the toughness and leadership of number 34. All-time, Charles Oakley ranks 22nd in rebounds with 12,205, 25th in games played with 1,282. I remember watching a lot of Knicks games on MSG. Marv Albert, John Andres doing the play-by-play. And so often, Charles Oakley would make those, he would shoot those jumpers from just on the corner, a couple steps inside the three-point line. But if he made those jump shots, I always seemed to have a good feel that the Knicks were going to win that game because Oak was making those jump shots. I never understood why he'd always take 2 or 3 of those early in the game, but it seemed to happen just about every night. So I have memories of that. Eventually, he did get traded to the Toronto Raptors for another player who might be on this list as well. It's funny how these things all connect. Number 3 is going to be Carmelo Anthony, whose shirt I am wearing today. I was a Melo fan from the very beginning. At the time, I was really a really big Syracuse basketball fan. It's never been the same for me ever since they left and went to the ACC. Football money, we know how all of this stuff works. If you haven't watched the Requiem for the Big East, 30 for 30, that really explains it. But it was a fantastic documentary on the history of Big East, particularly basketball. And it was such a good watch. But I became a big Melo fan during that whole season. He led Syracuse to their only NCAA basketball title, gave Jim Boeheim that elusive championship. And down the road, he was drafted by Denver, but eventually he did become a Knick after months and months of rumors. He was acquired to basically be the number 1 piece to go with Amari Stoudemire, a couple of other players. The Knicks were really building something with Stoudemire and Danilo Gallinari and a couple of other guys. Well, Gallinari went away, and Anthony took that spot. And the Knicks went from an intriguing team, but you didn't know quite if Stoudemire had that number 1 player in him. His knees were starting to wear down a little bit. He just really started to get hurt once he came to the Knicks. But Melo was the superstar. Melo was the name. Melo was the scorer. And Melo was supposed to be the difference maker. It didn't work out as well as Knicks fans would have liked. They only captured 1 playoff series in his 7 or 8 years as a Knick. And then he was traded for Enes Kanter, Dylan McDermott, and a couple of draft picks. But at the end of the day, I still look at Carmelo Anthony as a very good New York Knick. Maybe part of that is because the years away without him have been so putrid. But I think history will be kinder to Carmelo Anthony, who's still playing now. 19 years later, one of the greatest scorers there's ever been in NBA history. All right, number 2, we're going to talk about Marcus Camby, who came over to the Knicks in that Charles Oakley trade. At this point, the Knicks of the Pat Riley era were starting to age and wear down. So the Knicks moved on from Oakley. Patrick Ewing was starting to get up there in years too. Camby initially came in as really the backup center, and it took him a long time in that lockout season, that 98-99 series, to really get going. But right towards the end of the season, when the Knicks went on their late run to make the 1999 playoffs, you could really start to see that athletic size that other teams had a problem matching up against. And then it was really in the 1999 second round and into the Eastern Conference Finals, really the whole playoffs. But the Pacers in the Eastern Conference Finals, once Patrick Ewing was out and Camby became that 6th man off the bench, it was funny. The Knicks would start Chris Dudley at center and Kurt Thomas at power forward. But every time, about halfway into the first quarter, in came Camby. The crowd at the Guard would, you'd hear that little murmur that Camby was coming into the game. And the Pacers had no matchup for it. The Hawks had no matchup for it in the second round of the playoffs. The Heat had trouble with it before then. And his shot blocking ability, his scoring, his ability to rebound and just make these sudden explosive plays out of nowhere were an amazing asset that the Knicks never really had before that, I would say. They never had that sort of like lean and that lean, powerful presence in the middle. As great as Ewing was, he was more bulky, he was more deliberate. Camby added the speed and the fluidity that works so well. And Camby is actually 12th all-time in blocks in the NBA with 2,331. He was traded in one of the absolute worst trades this franchise ever made to the Denver Nuggets for Antonio McDyess on draft night. The Knicks also traded the rights to Nene Hilario in that trade, who wound up having about a 10, 12-year career with the Nuggets. He was with the Nuggets for many, many years. And in return, the Knicks got McDyess, who was coming off a torn ACL, played 10 games the year before. The biggest knock on Camby was he didn't play a lot because he got injured. Well, the previous year, Camby played 29 games. McDyess played 10 because of a torn ACL. So Ed Tapscott, interim general manager at the time, thank you for an absolute waste of a trade. And number 1, at center, at 7 feet from Georgetown, number 33, Patrick Ewing. Growing up in the mid-'80s, Patrick Ewing was the first basketball player I ever saw who really got my attention, who I just wanted to see win. The 33 in the orange and blue. I love watching his fadeaway jumpers. I like the way that he would block a shot, just pure power, no fear. Like he would go after everything. He didn't care if he had a goaltend. It was all about making those players remember that their shot got blocked. He would grab those rebounds, just pure aggression. Just he played nasty. Ewing did. He didn't smile on the. I can't remember him ever smiling on the basketball court during a game. He took his basketball seriously. So we all know the story. The Knicks won the lottery, the frozen lottery. Yeah, the envelope was apparently frozen, but they won that lottery to get the rights to draft Ewing, and it really took a while for the Knicks to put a decent team around him. It really wasn't until Rick Pitino came along for that 1 year, 1989, the Knicks started to get good. Of course, they lose to Michael Jordan and the Bulls in the second round. Seems to be a pattern. And once Riley came in, they started to get the Charles Oakleys and the John Starks, the Derek Harpers, these types of players, the Anthony Masons. Then you started to have an actual team where defense was emphasized. If you haven't read the book Blood of the Garden by Chris Herring, it really breaks down those Knicks teams very, very well from beginning to end. So definitely a book I would recommend. And I got to say, Ewing's career kind of came full circle after he wound up getting traded away to Seattle. Coming back as the Georgetown head coach and winning the Big East tournament with a Georgetown team that was not supposed to make the Big East tournament. It was really, really good to see him do that. This past year was an absolute washout, going 6-25. But no matter what, even if it doesn't work at Georgetown, Ewing will always be one of my childhood heroes. And it was good to see Ewing win a championship at Madison Square Garden, even if it was the Big East championship. So that's my top 5 Knicks. I'm going to be at AJ Gators this afternoon watching the Jets-Browns game with the Virginia Jets fans. And like I said earlier, catch me on the Buffalo Jets fan about 4:15 or so, 4:15, 4:30 after the game ends. All right. I'll see you back here with more content from you know where, the Wicker Chair.